The Deion Sanders era started with a win over TCU. Now he needs a win to get the season back on track. Can they pull it off?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to a Locked On Buffs, Locked On Horns, Frogs crossover. It's your host, Kevin Borba. Joining me today is Darrion Gray, our new Locked On Horn Frogs host. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for the highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. So that way we can keep our jobs. We can keep talking ball. Darrion, this is a huge game for, I think, both teams for two very different reasons, right? The biggest storyline, and I'll jump on it first because I'm already yapping, and I think Colorado needs this a little bit more than TCU probably, because let's flash back to 2 years ago, right? Everyone's like, is Deion going to win at the FBS level? Does his coaching success at the HBCU, FCS level translate? And Colorado stuns TCU, right? Is the intro to Travis Hunter. I feel like we all, for those of us that followed him at Jackson State, knew he was good, but I think that was his best game of his college career at that point. And Colorado put themselves on the map, and it was a huge win. Now, granted, they didn't finish the season how they would have liked, but very electric first month of the season. And now they need this win to sort of get the season back on track because they're floundering, right? So what does this storyline mean for the TCU side of things?
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point. I was the host of Locked On HBCU, so I watched the whole Deion Sanders ascension. I watched the beginning year of Travis Hunter, and he really dealt with a lot of injuries that I felt kind of kept his impact at JSU a little limited. So once he got to Colorado, he seemed to stay healthier. He was able to put together games. I think that it's just the flip, right? So with Deion, I think that this is the win of his career. I've said that on yesterday's episode, and I mean that from Jackson State to Colorado. I feel like that TCU victory was the win for Deion as a head coach. And unfortunately, you're on the returning side of that as TCU. So when you're TCU and everybody's talking about this big time game, let's be completely honest. The Horned Frogs were not that good that year. And in college football, we have this interesting thing where we pick and choose whether or not we're going to reflect on a win or loss in hindsight, right? Like you look at LSU versus Clemson. Everybody's discounting that Clemson win for LSU because we know what Clemson is now. But then there's sometimes where you face a team, you beat them and they were preseason top this, they end up not living up to the billing, but we still praise you as it being a good victory. That's what I feel like happened with Colorado. And I don't say that to take away from anything, but I do think that's the accurate description. For TCU, this is an opportunity to get a lick back. This is an opportunity to say, all right, we are now kind of what you thought we were in 2023. We're a better team than we were at that point. We're closer to being a playoff team than we were at that point. So now how about you get the real TCU experience? How about you really get to see some of the players that we'll talk about in segment 2 with our matchups, like a Josh Hoover, like I think it was the front seven. I can't remember exactly what it was, so I don't want to get into it, but we have some talented players on both sides of the ball, and I think that TCU is ready for the matchup, and they're ready for everything that comes with the Deion Sanders circus. I don't know if they were necessarily ready for all of that in 2023.
Yeah, I think in 2023, I think they all knew there was going to be attention, but I don't think they knew it was going to be like otherworldly attention. Like that was like probably the most watched game. If I remember correctly, it was like the most watched game of the season, or not the season, of the week. Probably one of the most watched games of the season, right? You had Shedeur Sanders doing his thing. You had Travis Hunter doing his thing. I think Colorado had 3 or 4 players make history in that game, and it was like, okay, this is insane, right? And I talked about this all the time, and it's hard to find. Like there is no coach in college football. And even when Nick Saban was around, and I need people to bear with me before I get to the point. I'm not comparing Deion Sanders to Nick Saban, but there is no coach in college football right now, maybe ever, that has the fame level of Deion Sanders, who he stopped playing football in the early 2000s, right? I think it was like 2005-ish. He played with the Ravens. He was like number 37, well past his prime. And he goes immediately into reality television. He goes into hosting or being on NFL Network. Like Deion Sanders has always been in the spotlight. So for him to have that platform and actually be good, because I mean, you know, as well as anyone, they're like HBCU football. I mean, it's a different thing. It's a different monster, right? They said the same thing about Cam Ward going up from the FCS level. They said the same thing about Shedeur Sanders going up from the FCS level. Like, nobody was counting or giving them any credit. So I think it was like, oh, shoot. And then also when Deion Sanders pulls out I had the receipts to everyone and their moms where he's like, oh, Darrion, you said this. I actually remember that you told me. Like, he had a receipt for everyone. And so I think that's why that game was so impactful for Colorado, because it was the start of an era. And it's very rare that we remember the start of an era as vividly as we do that Colorado one. And I think that's actually what can hurt Colorado this time around is I imagine, and I would like you to jump in here, that TCU's pissed, right? Still, like, I imagine they're like, yeah, that was not fun. Like, obviously we didn't finish the season how we wanted, but that game put them on the map of like being frauds, I guess, if you want, right? I remember, I forgot who it was. Their linebacker was like, we're not as good as we thought we were. Like, it was like sent them into a crisis mode in week 1. So I imagine they want to not only get their lick back, but they probably want to beat the hell out of Colorado. If I could be blunt.
That's the case, because the truth of the matter is, I talked about this on yesterday's episode. Deion is the face of Colorado. I agree. I think he has more fame than any coach we've known because he's famous to everybody. He's one of the most known football players ever. So this is without a doubt the biggest story. And I know that Shedeur is gone. I know that Travis is gone. I know that TCU has a different a different quarterback. They have a different ecosystem. They have a lot of things that aren't the same on both sides. But one thing that is the same is Sonny Dykes and Deion Sanders. And I think that that's enough. And not only is TCU upset from a couple of years ago, TCU's pretty upset from a couple of days ago. That Friday game against Arizona State is all the motivation you need for a bounce back. So I don't think that a lot of people look at Colorado a certain kind of way. And I think that sometimes we don't realize how close Colorado has been in certain games. But there's no overlooking them, no matter a record. There's no overlooking them, no matter anything. Like, you have to put a certain level of stock into what coaches say, because there was a whole TCU isn't overlooking Abilene Christian, and then Saturday right after the game, man, we overlooked Abilene Christian. I didn't think that the week of practice was that good after telling us all week that we are dialed in, right? So you got to take coach speak with a certain grain of salt. But from what Dykes is saying, I don't necessarily feel like he is overlooking this game. I think this is an important matchup, especially because you understand TCU can't afford to lose another Big 12 game, right? Like, you can't afford to overlook somebody. And with Colorado, you lose again. I think their hopes are already kind of done, but you lose again, it's nosedive time at this point, in my opinion. So both teams need this victory a lot.
Yeah, they do. And like, the Big 12 race is very much open. I think we'll pretty much be in a situation like last year where it's like last week and there's like 7 teams that have a mathematical chance of somehow making it, as long as like this person's shoes untied at 3:00 and like this person gets Mexican food at noon. Like that, I feel like we'll be in a similar situation. But the one thing that you said that really like hit with me is Sonny Dykes said something, I think it was yesterday or Tuesday, whenever we're recording, that this Colorado team has been close, right? He's acknowledging that although their record indicates they're not good, they have been playing well. And I do think there's truth to that, right? You lose to Georgia Tech, who's a top 25 team, by 7 points. You have BYU down by 2 touchdowns. You had them dead to rights, and then you kind of let them back in the game. And so Colorado is technically like, they're there. And I think TCU is making it a point to not be, and I feel like we're seeing this a lot this year and last year. Nobody's making it personal anymore, right? I think if we all go back to Deion Sanders' first year, it was like, I don't know how his roster is going to be with the transfer portal. I don't know if like this Travis Hunter kid's any good. Like, nobody's saying anything that's like trying to give Colorado fuel, because they know like if you fire Colorado up enough, like it will get the masses going. And so I think both coaches have a lot of respect for each other. And then the one thing I wanted you hit on as well, and you kind of did already, but talk about the playoff hopes for TCU, right? Because we all know the Big 12 is looked at as, I won't say second class, but it's like the SEC, Big 10, then the ACC and Big 12 are sort of stuck in this like, hey, we want to be at that table too, but we're not. 2 losses is almost a death wish, or it's pretty close to a death wish, right? 3 is for sure a death wish. And having 3 losses this early in the season, or 2 losses this early in the season for TCU, could really set them up for failure down the stretch. So talk to me about their playoff hopes.
Yeah, no, I think that 2 losses in the Big 12 only gets you in if you're able to somehow win the championship. I don't think you get an at-large with 2 losses in the Big 12. And that's partially the reality of what it is. And sometimes you feel like, man, well, other schools and different conferences, they can get 2 losses. And yeah, they can. And I'm not about to sit here and talk about what should or shouldn't happen. I'm just going to tell you about what it is. And in the SEC, they get to go against certain teams and everybody respects those squads. In the Big Ten, you get to go against certain teams, everybody respects those squads. There's more leniency. In the Big 12, the top teams don't get that respect. So you don't have the ability to lose to 2 teams. And Colorado is not one of the top teams in the conference. So if you lose, yes, you lost to Arizona State, which is a top team, but you lose to Colorado, the at-large it's even in a strange world, you're not getting the at-large with a Colorado and an Arizona State loss. But I don't think that you can run the table from here if you lose to Colorado. So it's pretty much done to me. If you lose here, your playoff hopes are done as well.
Yeah, and I think for Colorado, like there is a small hope where it's like, hey, we went out and a couple things go this way. Like you have to keep that hope, right? Because the season's way too young, and like you don't want to be heading into game 6 and you're like, well, season's over. So like that's a terrible place to be in, because that sort of erodes a program. So a lot's on the line for both of these teams. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the key matchups for this one, because I mean, there's a lot at stake and they need some guys to step up. But first, before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Let's talk some FanDuel. If you're not already on FanDuel, the NFL season is here, and the FanDuel has an offer you won't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets back if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. This episode is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Square. Now, we all love small businesses, and Square is the best place to support them. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spot. It runs on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's a sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. So Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Okay, welcome back to Locked On Buffs. It's me. It's Darrion Gray. We're talking key storylines. We talked that already, actually. We're talking key matchups. Darrion, let's just start off with your biggest matchup for this game, right? Because we all know football comes down to a couple of certain matchups per game, whether it's the quarterback and a receiver versus one corner, whether it's the defense being able to stop the run. What is the matchup that really gets you going?
It's Kaiden Salter's legs versus the TCU pass rush. I think that we saw last week, Sam Levitt did a lot with his legs. And I think the defense actually played well. Wasn't steel curtain, but it was good enough to win. But one thing that did give them trouble at times was the legs of Sam Levitt. The person who I'm looking at to stop this is the same person who I think had the best job or did the best job stopping it a week ago, and that's Caleb Elarms-Orr. He was absolutely fantastic, Kevin. Let me tell you, this guy at linebacker, he's been on a tear recently. He's had 3 sacks over the last 2 weeks, which is important because you played Kevin Jennings out of SMU who can move. You're playing Sam Levitt who can move last week, 2 sacks in that game. And now this week you're going to be playing against Kaiden Salter, who is a quarterback who can move. Once again, you're going to have to minimize that. You're going to have to play him more like you played Kevin Jennings, or have the success rate that you had against Kevin Jennings as opposed to the success rate you had against Sam Levitt. So that to me is my biggest matchup, because I think it's the thing that could give the defense some of the most trouble.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? When Kaiden Salter's got it going, he's got it going. I think my concern with Kaiden Salter's legs lately has been, I don't know, for whatever reason, I feel like he's relying on them a little too much, in the sense of like he's getting nervous in the pocket. And Colorado, no one faint, please sit down if you're ready for this. Colorado is giving Kaiden Salter the longest time to throw in college football, which is quite the statement considering where Colorado's offensive line has been the last 2 years. But he's getting nervous and he's missing open throws, right? During the pass game against BYU, there was a video of Deion Sanders going, he's wide open. because Kaiden Salter is scrambling around and he turned a 3rd and 3 into a 4th and 22 or something, or like he got sacked for 22 yards. And it's like, he's relying on his legs a lot, but when he gets going and when he's decisive, that's when his legs are impactful. I'm going to give my key matchup here, and we're staying right at the quarterback position. They call it the most important position in sports for a reason. Josh Hoover, he can huck that thing, right? He has on the year, and this is not an exaggeration, almost 1,300 yards passing, 11 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and is completing almost 67% of his passes, right? So he's about as precise as they come. He could push the ball down the field, and Colorado's corners were thought to be a strength heading into the year. And for whatever reason, this defense is just not where it needs to be. Last week, I think they had 4 pass interference or defensive holding calls on corners. And DJ McKinney, who was a projected first-round pick, is sort of sliding down draft boards, I would imagine, right? Just teams are picking on him. And you don't have Travis Hunter to lock down a whole side, so you don't have like this – like just for certain, like don't throw at Travis Hunter. Granted, I think it was Chandler Morris. He kept trying to do it back a couple years ago, and it was like, Chandler, buddy, there's a whole other side of the field, and you're giving Travis highlight reels. But yeah, I think Josh Hoover's ability to sort of just take over games with his arm and just stretch the field should be stressful for Colorado, because they like to go a lot of man coverage, and you guys have some dogs at receiver, right? That's TCU has some athletes, and Colorado does too. But Deion Sanders the other day said, and I think this is a perfect embodiment of where Colorado's secondary is. 95% of corners are playing not to get beat. 5% of corners are playing to make a play. And while he didn't say that his guys are falling into that 95% category, he did say he wants guys in the 5%. So that sort of tells me like Colorado's corners are playing a little timid, and this is not the team to be timid against. What's your next key matchup?
First, let me rebuttal to that. Not rebuttal, but add to that. I think that's a pivotal matchup, because Josh Hoover is coming for a bounce back game of his own. And he's a guy who I think is very talented. And I don't think that he should be summed up by what he did in the last 5 minutes against Arizona State, but he will probably use that as the competitor that he is to say, I got to prove I'm not that guy from the last 5 minutes. If Hoover can get things going, then we're going to be looking at a completely different offense than if Hoover's struggling. Like I know that Dyke said he wants to run the ball 35 to 40 times. We'll see, right? You know, sometimes coaches just be saying stuff. I don't know.
Colorado's been saying all offseason they were going to run the ball, and they keep not running the ball. So
yeah, I don't know if he's going to run the ball 35 to 40 times, but it does bring me to my next topic, and that is the Colorado front line versus the TCU front line, or excuse me, the defensive line versus the offensive line for TCU. So the offensive line for TCU has been a good pass blocking team for the most part. Like for the most part, they have done a good job protecting Josh Hoover. The back end of the SMU game for a period of time was weak, and then the majority of the Arizona State game was weak. But Arizona State has one of the better pass rushers in the country. So I don't know if necessarily, and they were in a big time environment. That was a huge kind of storm for TCU's offensive line. So we'll
Friday see what too. That's very, very Pac-12 after dark vibes. Like they had everything going for them.
Rough, right? And I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I am going to give them one more week. If they can protect, so they've been able to protect pretty well. If they can protect, I think Hoover can dice them up. But they have not been a good run blocking team. They've graded really below average for most of the season. This was not a one-game deal. This has been 4 weeks that they've graded below average by PFF as a run blocking offensive line. Kavorian Barnes, I think, comes back this week, so that's going to be major for the run game. But at the end of the day, if the protection is not good, if the run blocking is not good, this is going to be a game that's way closer than you want it to be.
Yeah, I think we're gonna stay in the trenches here. I'll probably go front seven because, and actually I'll piggyback off your point, and mine kind of applies anyway. Colorado's run defense has been atrocious, if we're just being honest. This is actually the first team they've played all season that doesn't have, and Josh Hoover, I mean, he's athletic enough to where he's not like a statue, but he's not going to hurt you like Bear Bachmeier did, Haynes King. Like those are the quarterbacks that Colorado has really struggled with this year. Even Connor Wigman over at Houston. I personally was like, make this a Connor Wigman game. Like don't let them run the ball. Like make Connor Wigman throw. It turns out Connor Wigman's like, yeah, I'll run too. And it's like, okay, my bad. Like I didn't know your game like that. I pulled out the Shaq meme. I was like, sorry for that. I wasn't aware you had that in your bag.
I'm trying to tell everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that magic trick video, like, should have told us all, right? But no, I think Josh Hoover is a lot more stationary than these other quarterbacks. Yeah. So that should give Colorado at least some, not an edge, but like, okay, we don't have to worry about the quarterback beating us with his legs for 30 yards. But that being said, their run defense has been atrocious. And that leads me to my next point. My next key matchup is Colorado's front seven versus TCU's run game. Sonny Dykes is preaching we're going to run the ball 40 times a game, probably because Colorado's giving up 200 yards of rushing per game, right? This is a game for TCU where it's like, hey, our offensive line, like Darrion said, a little bit below average when it comes to run blocking, right? Our running backs, they're good, but they haven't had that breakout game. Well, this is the team to do it against, right? And if you're Colorado, don't be that team, right? You don't want to be the team that you allow someone else to find the run game against, right? You slowed down LJ Martin of BYU, which was great. Like, they held him to, I think it was like 40-something yards. But the problem was you let Bear Bachmeier run for almost 100. So you have to be able to slow down the run game. Otherwise, that's sort of going to be your big issue throughout the year. And this is no shot at TCU, but you're going to face better run games and better running quarterbacks the rest of the way, right? Devin Dampier is still on the schedule. Like, you have a lot of Avery Johnson at Kansas State still on the schedule. Even though Kansas State's not that good, Avery Johnson can scoot, right? Dylan Edwards can scoot, right? You don't want to be the team that's just like, hey, we're just going to run the ball against you for 400 yards every week, and you can't do anything about it. And I don't know if you could fix that, honestly, right? We're about 6 weeks into the season. I don't know if you just flip a switch and you're like, we could stop the run now, but Colorado needs to figure out a way to minimize the damage. And Darrion, talk to me about why TCU is so eager to run the ball.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to ask you real quick before I answer that. You put a little bit of an emphasis on quarterbacks. Does Colorado stop running backs well, or is it just a quarterback thing, or is it just all across the board they struggle with?
It's kind of a week by week thing, honestly. They've limited running backs, right? For every LJ Martin performance where they hold a top tier running back to 43 yards, there's a Wyoming performance where the Wyoming running back runs for, I think it was like a $160 or whatever it was, right? So the run game just isn't what it needs to be. The linebackers, and I talked about this all off season. I thought Colorado was shallow at linebacker. People hated me for saying it because it's like, we get these transfers, right? And it's like, oh, this guy's so cool. He comes from X school, right? Or he did this at this G5 program. It's like, great, right? Or he transferred from this SEC program. It's like, great. And there's probably a reason he's leaving that SEC program, but let's not go there, right? And Colorado's linebackers, their front seven, they're just not physical enough, right? And that's sort of been their biggest flaw, is they cannot push other teams around. I have Jordan Dominic, who's a former Colorado player. I have him come on every week, and he just talks about they're not disciplined in their rush lanes, right? They're over pursuing. There was a play against BYU where, granted, it was a psychotic play by BYU where Bear Bachmeier faked 2 handoffs before spinning around and handing it off to a wide receiver running the other way. Like, it was insane. But Colorado had no sort of, like, the assignments were just thrown out the window. Like, everyone, it felt like we were watching like a 5U soccer game where they're just like all running to the ball in like little clumps. Like, that's what Colorado's defense has been doing. And so they're just not getting the performance they need. And I don't know if they will. So that's sort of my concern, right? They're hoping that maybe they could find a guy in Kylan Salter, former TCU player, who could step up, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think they want to run the football because they're getting their lead back, right? Like, I think that Kavorian Barnes seems to be trending. He had the no contact jersey on Wednesday. He didn't. So I think signs are pointing towards him coming back. And I think that leads it. You know, TCU has a lot of really good running backs.
Yeah.
But Barnes, to me, is different. Call it preference, call it whatever. I like physical backs. I like guys who will go in, they will punch you in the mouth. And I don't think that they have that on this team outside of Kavorian Barnes. So missing him for the last game and a half, because he did miss the last 2.5 games, because he did miss the SMU and the Arizona State game after getting injured halfway through the Abilene Christian game. I felt the difference. I thought that the running attack was much different without Kavorian. So having him back, I think, is a big reason on why you want to do it, because I think you can really enforce your will if you have Barnes at running back. And that's no disrespect to guys like Payne and Battle, who I think are good running backs. I think they excel the best on the outside. But you can really enforce your will. And when you have a back like that, yeah, let's run 35 to 40 times, because eventually you're going to get tired. So that's why I think they want to come in and emphasize. And probably, like you said, they see the weakness. That's what good coaches do. You see weaknesses, you lean in, and maybe he's just giving us a peek into the game plan for Saturday.
Yeah, I think the run game for both teams will be a big factor, right? Colorado found Draylon Miller. They used him at Wildcat last week for the first time ever. And his entire career, they're like, this is a Deebo Samuel type guy, and never used him as such. And all of a sudden they started running with him. Then they went away from it. So I think the run game, whoever wins the run game, prediction right now before we do our predictions, whoever wins the run game will probably win the game. That will be my bold prediction. That's probably not so bold. But we're going to dive more into predictions. But first, another quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs, Locked on TCU is brought to you by our sponsors over at Mazda. If you guys aren't familiar with Mazda, they craft cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and so does Mazda. They bring the same intention to how they craft every model. So, like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode of Locked on Buffs and Locked on TCU is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Game Time. Game Time is my favorite place to get tickets for anything, really. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. There's tailgates, there's rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. So what you see is what you get. My favorite feature is the little seating view on your phone, right? You could tilt your phone and you see exactly what you're seeing. So there's no surprising poll in the way. There's a Colorado or a BYU fan who tweeted this past week that they got a seat at the Colorado game that was directly parallel with the field. So they're not even aimed at the field. And it's use Game Time. That doesn't happen because you're looking at what you're seeing. So go download Game Time and use our code because they're gonna give you some deals. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. If you use code LOCKEDONCollege, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Darrion, it's a Locked on Buffs, Locked on Horns Frog crossover, and now we have to get awkward. Right now we have to tell each other what we think is going to happen, and it's going to be awkward for someone. I'll let you lead the way first. But first, let me lay out the land for everyone before we dive in, the odds, the weather. TCU is at home, as we know, so it's in Fort Worth. Weather, apparently 88 and sunny. So we're going to probably be a little hot, a little humid. 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So that's, 6:30 Central. TCU right now. Big favorites, 13.5. Talk to me. What do you think's happening?
I don't think they cover the spread.
Okay.
But it's not going to be uncomfortable because I'm sure you're going to agree with me that TCU is winning. I don't think it's that uncomfortable. I mean, unless some people get uncomfortable with the truth. I don't know. But you don't strike me as that type of gentleman. But no, in all honesty.
Only if I don't like how it shapes me, of course.
I think TCU wins this game. I do. I think that TCU is the better team. I think that one thing that really concerns me or would concern me if I was on the Colorado side is that they have not shown the ability to finish. And I highlighted that. I thought that against Houston, they were just kind of bad on offense. Against Georgia Tech, they struggled towards the end. Against BYU, they let them come back. There was just opportunity. The offense has not shown up in the fourth quarter for the Buffs. And I trust if it comes down to that, the TCU will win. And I don't think that it will. I think that TCU will win this game comfortably, maybe not 14 points comfortably, but I think that the struggles for the struggles for Colorado's secondary are very concerning. I think Jordan Dwyer has a bounce back game. I think that Joseph Manjack is a guy that Colorado will be very familiar with. He's going to be the guy with no gloves, no accessories, right? He's just the guy in uniform. He'll be in the slot. Crazy. That's him. You'll see him. You're like, oh, Manjack, that's the guy Darrion was telling you about, of course. Yeah. But he has no accessories. If he ever put on a glove, I wouldn't know who he was. But I think that they have talent at wide receiver. Eric McAllister, I don't think plays, and that's the top guy. I don't think that he plays this week. But if Colorado's secondary is as questionable as you and I have discussed, I think TCU has that. If they can't stop the run, Kavorian Barnes' return, I think TCU has that. I think the defense has been playing well. Last week, don't let the Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson duo fool you. This defense was timely. This defense made good stops. They had a solid pass rush. They just have to stay, disciplined and try not to allow Salter to just go all the way around. But if you can play relatively disciplined, I think that you can win that battle. I think they have too many advantages around this game to lose it. So I think that TCU comes out with a win, and a much needed win.
Yeah, we talked about the truth being uncomfortable, and I think this is going to be uncomfortable for Colorado fans. Colorado is fragile right now. Deion Sanders 2 weeks ago now said that they're still trying to find their identity, and it may happen against BYU, may happen against TCU. And I'm here to tell you, and I said it 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, you're not going to find your identity against the best teams in the Big 12. That's just not how it works. Today, little fun quote for you, Darrion.
Talk to me.
Fifth-year transfer, I think he's a fifth year. Veteran offensive lineman will say, the leadership on this team can definitely use some work. We lead by example in our room. Don't love that, right? There's been a lot of leadership questions. There's been just this Colorado team is not where they need to be, right? I don't think they're there mentally. I don't think they're there physically. I think coaches are going to lose some jobs by the end of the year. Not Deion, obviously, but coordinators. And I think this is going to be a rough week for Colorado. I think they lose this game. I think Josh Hoover, as he does against pretty much everyone, is going to expose the secondary. And I just feel like until Colorado sort of finds their identity, can put together consistent performances, right? The same Colorado team that goes up 14-0 against BYU was not the same team I saw in that second half. It wasn't. You need to be able to play consistently throughout. And until they do that, I don't trust them. And I don't trust them against TCU, a motivated TCU team, because they're playing pissed off because of 2 years ago, and they have a lot more at stake than Colorado. And when I hear veteran players saying we don't have good leadership, when I see videos of the wide receivers coach going up to a Marion Miller, who's the best wide receiver in Colorado, being like, hey, I don't like the body language of this group. I don't love that, right? When you see just so many things culminating and it's so early in the season, to me, this is like the start of a snowball effect for Colorado. And it could either be a good one or a bad one, but I think they lose this game.
I don't think there's too much to add from my side. I agree. I think that that quote was devastating. That quote screams lack of accountability. It screams, like, I don't know, lack of awareness. Like, do you really have strong leadership in your room? If you would step out of your room and say that, I don't know. Like, that was not.
PR training in Colorado don't go hand in hand, as we learned today with one of their famous alums.
Like, at the end of the day, I don't think that, man, I think Deion is a good leader. I think Deion is a good motivator. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I think Deion his flaw as a leader, in my opinion, is some people think they're Deion. Like, it's one of the reasons I'm trying to coach this out of myself, but it's like I can't do a lot of teaching and things because you're gonna do it the way I do it. Unfortunately for Deion, he's Deion Sanders, and it's not another one of him. I don't care how many kids he has. There's not another Deion, So that's something that you can say when you are of Deion status, and maybe it gets left to the side, but you're not. And I get it. I think he motivates guys, but gosh, they think they're him.
I mean, that's a tough thing to hear, right? And I think that's very much directed at Kaiden Salter, for being honest. The quarterback is like, he pulled out after the BYU game, he pulled out it's tough for me to bounce back because I was benched a couple weeks ago. It's like, dude, that was 2 weeks ago. You had a good game against Wyoming. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of, I don't think anyone wants to be the guy for Colorado, right? And I talked about this with Jordan Dominic, and I'll conclude the show with this. Sorry to go so long, but Jordan Dominic, pass rusher for Colorado, was on Deion's first team, was on that team that beat TCU. He said in football, because Jordan Seaton's a leader for Colorado. I don't want to overlook that, but Jordan Seaton's a left tackle. And Jordan Dominic told me, your leader of your team has to be someone that scores touchdowns or makes tackles, right? It can't be someone who's in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball, because at the end of the day, you're never going to be the face of the franchise in the way that those other positions will be. So when your leadership is lacking at we'll call them sexy positions, it's gonna be a tough one. So we'll see how this unfolds. Darrion, I appreciate you for hopping on. Appreciate you for doing this crossover. Tell the people where they could find you and where you're working at.
Locked On Horn Frogs, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. I mean, you're on Locked On now, so I'm sure you know the drill by now. But wherever you get your podcast, you can find me, Locked On Horn Frogs. Also on Twitter at South Exclusives. So
there we go. You know where to find me as well. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs. I'm over at Athlon Sports, writing all things college football, NFL, and everything in between. We appreciate you for making our podcast your first or second listens of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And hopefully we're treated to a good game this week. And I hope all of you have a great and safe night. I'm Kevin Borba. He's Darrion Gray. And we'll see y'all tomorrow.